So growing up, I learned that there are only two genders. Now, I know there's a lot of controversy, including with Aiden Ross tweeting out that there are only two genders. But me personally, growing up in middle school, they taught me that there are only two genders, male and female, X and Y. And today's story is basically where things got really intense with my teacher and some other girl in my class who thought she was right. So let's get straight into this insane story. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba, and welcome back to another insane video. So today's story starts off back when I was in middle school. This was my grade 6 year, and I remember basically my teacher ended up walking in front of the class, explaining to all of us that there's going to be a new unit we have to learn for school. Now, me, honestly, I don't really know much about it. I look at it and just think, oh, great, more homework. But then I remember there was a girl with like blue hair that was, I'm not gonna lie, majorly, and I mean majorly obese, comes into the classroom and says, "Hello class, my name is Lizzie, and today I'm going to be teaching you all the different genders." Wait, what is what I said? And then I remember there was a kid that usually was really smart in my class and would always answer every question. He ended up putting up his hand and saying, "Oh, I know this one. There's only two." I remember when he said that out loud with his hand up in the air, acting like he was giving the right answer. I remember the teacher looked over at the student and said, "You are wrong. You are absolutely the dumbest kid in the class." At that point, I remember the whole class started getting confused. They had no idea what in the world this teacher was talking about. But then she started talking about a bunch of other different genders. Like, for example, for some reason, the word two-spirit is a gender. I'm not gonna lie. When I first heard about it, I thought it was some Pokemon or a new special ability you would get in Skyrim. But no, she ended up explaining that two-spirit was like this whole like feeling both things. I don't know. But one thing I realized, the more she explained about the different genders, everything determined on how you're feeling. It's not based on what's between your legs. It's not based on what hormones you have or what chromosomes you have, because apparently you can change it all with just one pill. But basically what she was explaining is that whatever you feel like is what your gender is. I remember me learning this. I thought that was pretty interesting. So I started basically going back home that day, basically questioning myself, thinking, wait, so am I like supposed to be a boy? Reminder, I was in grade 6, so I was way too young to understand anything. Meaning that the only things in my life that I really cared about was my middle school crush, which was a girl at the time, and always has been a girl because I never changed my preference, I guess. I don't know. And basically Call of Duty. But going on, I remember I went up to my parents and I asked them the same question. I said, "Mom, Dad, am I supposed to be a boy?" I remember my parents looked at me and my dad looks at me and says, "What do you mean? What's between your legs?" And I told them, I had a giant eggplant. And then right after that, my mom says to me, "That means you are a boy." Then I started getting confused. I remember I ended up telling them that my teacher told me that basically your gender is based on how you're feeling and what you feel like you are, basically. Now, one thing I have to mention is that I'm Christian and my family's Christian and my dad believes in the Bible and so do I. And basically, I remember my dad ended up opening the Bible and showing me it saying, "See, look, it says here there are only two genders, man and woman. God made only man and woman. There is no two-spirit, there is no pan-gender, whatever you want to be gender." And it kind of just made sense to me. I don't know, growing up in a Christian household, you kind of just learn these things, I guess, or spiritual terms, and bringing up two-spirit did not help at all. But basically, I remember that situation afterwards. I ended up going to school the next day. And if you guys don't know, I remember my mom basically in the morning before I went to school, ended up putting a Bible in my backpack saying, "God will take you through this class and not be hurt by Satan." And then my mom ended up praying for me and I ended up going to school. When I went to school, I remember we ended up having the same lady, that big fat obese woman, Lizzie is what we kind of call her for the story, basically ended up going in front of the class and saying, "Okay, I'm going to be assigning some work to you guys. I want you guys to think of how many genders there are from what I taught you yesterday." And the blue-haired obese woman ended up pointing me out and saying, "Yes, Bubba?" "Yeah, so apparently in this book," and I ended up whipping out the Bible once she pointed me out, and I opened it to what my dad showed me and said, "If you look here, it says God only made man and woman. There's no two-spirit." When I brought out the Bible, the look that this teacher had on her face was like she was going to kill me. Like, no joke, she walked up to me, stomping with her rhino toes, and basically said to me, "This is not real." Ended up grabbing my Bible and throwing it out the window. Like, no joke, she actually threw it out the window. I didn't even know the window was open until she ended up throwing the Bible out there. At that point, I remember I stood up and I ran for it. I actually ended up leaving the classroom, ran outside, and basically went to go grab my Bible. And when I did, I remember the teacher, the fat obese woman, ended up basically looking out the window, saw I picked up my Bible again, and said, "You're not allowed back in this classroom until you understand the real genders," and ended up closing the window. And at that point, when I tried walking back into class, me thinking that maybe she was joking or something, or maybe trying to pull a stunt, I was ended up locked out of my classroom. I remember I ended up sitting down outside the door, crisscross applesauce, basically waiting to maybe get an answer or in some way actually get invited back into the classroom. And then I remember our principal was walking down the hallway and she looked at me sitting down. She came up to me and said, Bubba, Bubba, what did you do? And I told her how basically the teacher ended up throwing my Bible outside and basically told me not to come in until I learned all the genders. And when I told my principal this, she was very upset. Like, no joke, she was so mad to the point where, I'm not gonna lie, the only time I've seen someone that mad was when I brought up to my father about this whole conversation about two genders. And basically, she ended up opening the classroom door with a key, walking me inside with her hand on my shoulder and saying, excuse me, teacher, you're not allowed to kick out students. You do know this, right? And then I remember the fat teacher ended up turning her head at me, looking at me with like her evil stare that she had towards all the children in the classroom, and said to my principal, yeah, no, he's not allowed in my classroom. He literally brought up the Bible in the middle of class. Who do you think he is? And then I remember my principal ended up yelling back at her saying, listen, I don't care how you feel. Throwing this kid's faith out the window is gonna make me kick you out of this school. At that point, I remember the whole class was just staring at what was going on and freaking out, thinking this is like insane. And then I remember afterwards, I ended up looking around and everyone was looking at me as well because I guess caused all this in some way. And I remember I just went to go sit back down, put my Bible back in my backpack, and then basically the teacher ended up escorting the student out of the class. I thought it was over. I thought maybe the argument was over. That's it, you know, move on to better things. The teacher ended up coming back to our classroom, the original teacher that we had, not the big old fat obese woman, because she was just left outside. And she came back to the classroom saying, what happened to Lizzie? I ended up putting up my hand and saying that she ended up getting kicked out and all that stuff because she threw my Bible outside. And basically, she ended up getting really irritated and actually ended up going down to the principal's office. I remember basically that almost like for like 20 minutes at the end of class, we had no teacher. We were all just sitting down, just chilling and just going on our phones, doing our own thing. We didn't know what to say or do. So me, I remember I ended up just pulling out my iPod, started playing Angry Birds and going on YouTube. But out of nowhere, I remember I saw the fat teacher that originally was teaching us about all these different genders coming to the window that she originally threw out my Bible and was just staring at me. She was staring at me as if she was going to cast lightning through the school to hit me. Like, I didn't know what to think. And at that point, I remember the teacher, the original teacher, ended up coming walking back in, seeing that Lizzie was outside, the fat obese teacher that no one likes, and basically said, Bubba, look out that window. You caused this. What? I remember at that point, I was so annoyed. I ended up texting my mom with my iPod using iMessage since I had Wi-Fi to the school, telling her what's going on. And at that point, my parents ended up coming to the school, arguing with the teacher that we had and also the other teacher, Lizzie, because they met up outside somehow. And basically one thing led to another. Cops were called because apparently this fat obese woman tried hitting my own father. Yeah, I don't even know what to think. At this point, honestly, I'll tell you this much. There are people that believe in science and there are people that believe in, well, their faith. And there are also people that believe in their feelings. If you believe in your feelings, sure, be whatever you want. Be an attack helicopter if you have to. But at the same time, if you believe in your faith and believe in biology, well, terms are, I think we all know, there's only two genders. But that's basically it for today's story. Make sure to do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And like I always say, just fall for more embarrassing but crazy stories. Peace out, guys.